Hello, this is David Power, student ID W200 90463, and I'm submitting my final assessment for my Lean Tools and Techniques Module 1. If we look at our introduction slide here, the process that I decided to take a look at for this assignment was new business applications where funds are being transferred from another carrier. What this means is if a customer comes in and purchases a new product from Delaware Life, but they are not accompanying money with the application, such as a check or a bank transfer. If their money is already tied up in another financial institution, within an annuity or a pension, it's then the business of Delaware Life to liaise with this losing carrier prior to publishing new policy documents. When we look at this, there are four contributing parties to this process, and below are all of the following. If we look at the very first, we have the agent slash customer. They will process the new business by completing an application. The agent will send his proposed sale through to his licensed carrier. The licensed carrier is the IMO. So within the insurance organization in the US, we send out license agreements to IMOs that they can sell our product. Those IMOs can then sublet those licenses to agents out on the road or satellite offices. All business wrote by any agent has to come back through the IMO to make sure that the data is correct. It goes through what's known in the industry as a scrub. A scrub is just a review of all data to make sure that there are no errors at this early stage. Once the scrub has been completed, the paperwork is then sent to SE2. Once SE2 receives the application from the IMO, they will do another initial review. This would be scrub number 2. Once they establish that the paperwork is in good order, the industry standard is IGO. They then move on and they put the contract will be set up on our internal platform. Once the contract will be set up on our internal platforms, the outcome of the review will determine the next steps within the process. If the paperwork is deemed to be not in good order or NIGO within the industry, we will then contact the IMO. This should not be the fact because they've already completed their first initial scrub of all the data. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. This first process might go to and fro anything up to 3 or 4 times on any one set of data slash application. Once we get paperwork back to us from the IMO that is in good order, then we can move on and we can reach out to the losing carrier asking them for the funds to be transferred over to ourselves. Once again, this may not always be done on the first request, and we may have to liaise with that losing carrier a number of times. Once we have eliminated all the errors and that were identified, we can then correctly resubmit all the paperwork for another review of scrub number 3. Once everything is deemed in good order, transfer of paperwork has been sent to the losing carrier. Then the losing carrier will terminate the account where the held are fund on their side, and they will transfer the funds directly to SE2. At this stage, we can establish a new contract within our system and we can mail policy pages to the customer. If all of the above steps have been completed in a timely manner and have not exceeded 90 days, we will be happy to deliver a new contract. Unfortunately, this sometimes exceeds our 90 days, and the problem here is it becomes stale dated. What stale dated means is the signature on the original application has been there for more than 3 months, and the customer may or may not want to go ahead with it anymore. If the customer does want to continue on, we then have to get new paperwork and the whole process starts over again. When we look at the current state, we can see the picture here on the left hand side is all the potential touch points. At the very start of the process, the agent will be liaising with the customer. They will draw up the contract and they will get that signed off. Once it's signed off, they will send it to their IMO. By right, the IMO should have scrubbed the data at this stage prior to sending it to SE2. SE2 mailroom will take it in, they'll index it, and depending on the initial review, the first scrub, as we spoke about earlier, or the second scrub, apologies for my correction, we will determine which path we will go down. Is this a IGO in good order application, or is this a NIGO? If NIGO, we then go back through a series of steps to get it corrected, where if we go IGO, we actually jump straight to the losing carrier steps. We reach out to the losing carrier, get the funds in. Once the funds come in, we will go back in and send out the new paperwork for this new application. If we look at it as a NIGO application, the problem here is it can loop around and around and around and around, and this is where we run into our issues. If not all data was reviewed correctly, let it be from the IMO or from ourselves here within SE2, we then get corrected paperwork for the errors that had been found, but then we can go back and review it a second time or a third time and find more errors, and then we have to go back again and again and again. So these are a number of the issues that I'd like to reduce from this current value stream. If we move our focus to the diagram on the right hand side, you can see here that we have a very long drawn out cycle times. Also, our lead times in between our steps are far too drawn out at times. Although some of them are your standard 24-hour turnaround within the industry, when we have to liaise with outside carriers, we do have to give ourselves 13 days from sending the data out to get it fixed to actually receiving funds back in. So it does make this process a very long-winded process, I'm afraid. When looking at some of the areas that we could improve on, I wanted to figure out were the areas that were hurting us most. Was it the process that we're following at present? Is it the people? Is it the people that are actually involved in the process? Was it management slash the time management? Was it the management that we are people managers within the different organizations, the different departments? Was it the equipment that we use? Was it our environment, our workplace, or was it outside forces? Unfortunately for this, if our main driving factors turned out to be the outside forces, I wasn't sure how much we could do to actually improve this. We could liaise with the outside forces, but we don't have the ability to change this at this stage, I'm afraid. When we look at the process, it's clear to see the process itself has far too many touch points. There is multiple touch points by multiple different agents the whole way across the process. As it stands at this moment in time, a new application will come into the same queue as all our other applications, let it be for correspondence or any other applications that will come in on a daily basis. The problem with this is this application can go to one of a number of sites. It can go to our head office in Topeka. It can go to one of our satellite offices in Dallas, New Jersey, or here in Ireland, or it can go to our offsite partners in India. And uh, depending on what's needed, depending on whether it's IGO or NIGO, the next time this application comes back, it will not come back into the same person, and it can move from site to site, continent to continent, and sometimes the communication, we have issues because although the first agent to touch it feels like they've made clear notes on the account, this is not always seen by the next agent that picks up the document. When we look at the people side of it, what are we opening ourselves up to? Using people to administrate these documentations, we leave ourselves open to human error. We also look at it where we have different priorities. What I mean by this is if somebody in the mailroom and somebody in the sales team might look at a new application in a very, very different light. New application for somebody in the mailroom is just another document that has to be scanned and indexed to whatever queue. A new application for an agent means the sooner this policy gets up, live and active, is the sooner he gets his commission and he gets paid. So of course we have to look at different priorities. And then with the human error, looking at human errors, I wanted to see how many human errors of a certain type we had, and did we have training gaps? Did we need to do something with our training team to eliminate these? When we looked at the management side of things, the one big thing that I wanted to focus on was the time management, or SLAs. Each time that an agent picks up a document, looks at it, and finds an error or moves it on to the next point, the SLA for that one touch point stops and a new clock starts. So this was one of the driving factors for myself. If we constantly stop the SLA and restart it from the time, although we're reporting that or we're within SLA, from the time that the first application came into us to the time that we're still stating that we're in SLA could be 2.5 months down the road. This is not a true way to look at our service levels. When we look at equipment in this area, we have no system communication. What I mean by is our IMO's systems don't truly talk to our in-house systems. What will happen is documents will come in from one, and then they will have to be adjusted and moved onto our systems. We have multiple sources of the same data. We've got overlap on individual systems showing same data time and time again. Not all agents are looking at the same data in the same platforms. If we look at the environment, once again, I've touched on this earlier, we've got multiple offices. We've got our head office in Topeka, we've got our three satellite sites, New Jersey, Dallas, and here in Ireland, and then we have offshore partners sitting in India. And within India, we probably make up 50% of all our staff. So a high possibility for it to be picked up within that continent. When we looked at the outside forces, I've already spoke about this in the introduction slide, we look at different priorities. We've got external parties and their priorities will be different to ourselves here as the receiving carrier. We have conflict in timelines. Here in SE2, we will follow our own timelines, where an IMO is a separate entity and they will have their timelines, and the losing carrier once again will have their timelines. There is little to no communication between our point of contact. This I've once again touched on in the earlier part, the environment. We've got very slim, undetailed notes from each touch point. So these were some of the areas that we really had to look at, really drill down and see where can we make changes to eliminate these. After drilling down through the fishbone on the previous chart, these were some of the countermeasures that we recommended. What we wanted to do was we wanted a group of POCs into a team. We wanted to group them into a team rather than individuals. What I mean by this is, as I explained already, this application will come in to the general queue and can be dispersed anywhere around the world. What I wanted was a team of specialists, team of solely focused agents, just looking at new business where we had to follow up on funds. This team that didn't have to be very large. This team just had to be positioned in one area with a small backup in another satellite site where if a tornado came through in the morning, we could still continue to function. What we wanted to do with this was I wanted to streamline it where people spoke, people communicated, not only in their documents on the on-base platform, but also between themselves. Everybody knew which new business application they were talking about and where it stood along our pipeline. I wanted it to be a shared SLA. I wanted the SLA to cover all touch points within the business. I wanted to move away from our start-stop SLA and resetting the timer on it. I wanted us to engage with the IT department. I wanted to develop a combined system that will help us from end to end, a system that will actually communicate with our outside sources. The problem with this was a very long-term solution. This was never going to be fixed within the short time frame of a project like this, but what it did do was it got interactions between the IT departments and the operations departments. We got our outside vendors involved and we were able to start building a blueprint for a system that will help us along this. Problem with this is it's an expensive system and it will have to be budgeted into our capital projects in coming years. May not be delivered in 2020, but could be delivered in over 2 years, capital projects from 2020 and 2021. I wanted to conduct a TNA, training needs analysis. I wanted to identify what the gaps were. Why were we getting so many errors? Why were we not spotting errors the first time in the first scrub? I wanted to see were the errors that we were finding, were they the same type of errors time and time again, and could we work with our training partners and build training so that we wouldn't see this going forward. I also wanted to implement more stringent QA, quality assessments. Industry standards say that we should quality check anywhere between 25 and 75% of our document, depending on what it is. Something that comes in without money isn't quality checked as highly as others. But the problem with that is when we only focus on money with an application, we do tend to leave this one to the side. It was quality checked up to 75% at times, depending on the tenure of the agent, but I wanted this increased to represent the same as incoming trades with cash. I wanted 100%. I wanted to introduce an running SLA. What I mean by a running SLA is an SLA that once the application hits our mailroom, the clock starts, and that does not stop until we issue our contract. This start-stop SLA is actually hindering us. Although we can report to our vendors that we are within SLA, it is actually drawing it out and creating more work for us in the long run, because we have to go back to the start time and time and time again on contract applications that we were within SLA but actually ran longer than 90 days to issue a policy. I wanted us to improve our channels of communication. I wanted us to reach out to our IMO partners. These are the people that keep us in business. I wanted us to be talking to these on a weekly basis rather than 3 days before our 90-day deadline. We have to keep everybody in the loop of what's out there, what's working and what isn't working at process. I wanted call outs to be made to IMOs in the final month prior, not in the final 3 days. I wanted every time that we leave a policy lapse because of stale dating, it's potential revenue lost to the business. We have to put a stop. Implementing these actions, what was it after doing for us? So, by grouping the points of contact into a team rather than individuals, we profiled a new queue in our on-base system. Our on-base system is our new internal mail. So all the requests no longer went to the general queue. They now went to a team solely based in Topeka. This was based in our new business team, and they would take these applications and see them end to end. The team had an overall SLA here. The team had sole ownership, and it was not being touched by external parties at any stage. By removing the individual point of contacts and reintroducing the ownership within the policy, this was giving us a more detailed look at the policy, because they knew that this policy could come back to them time and time and time again, and not to one of our business partners somewhere around the world. A shared SLA per team. Why did we want to do this? The shared SLA no longer looked at per touch point, as I touched on earlier. Who did we do this with? We done it with the new business team in Topeka. They were our operations team in Topeka. The results of this were a reduction of overall work time. Because the clock was actually taking from start to finish, we found that we were getting stuff done more efficiently. I wanted to conduct the TNA and identify and close any training gaps. We reviewed all stale dated or NIGO documents for the last quarter, compiled a list of common errors, and reached out to our training department to develop training for this. This was done here in Ireland, but delivered around the world, not alone to the new business team in Topeka, but we actually done it because we found so many common trends. We actually done it, and we were able to lift and shift it into other queues. By doing this, we reduced human error, which increased our quality scores and reduced the number of stale dated applications we had on request. We implemented our more stringent QA. We done this by implementing a new queue within our on-base system. We increased the audit limits to 100%, as if this was cash in our hands at this moment in time. This was done by the processing managers of the Topeka operations department, and our quality auditors overlooked all applications. This reduced the number of additional scrubs that we ever needed. We reduced the duplication of work and became a lot more efficient. We wanted to introduce the running SLA. The SLA stat is now from the time that the document enters the workflow system and is no longer determined by touchpoint. Once again, this was implemented by the processing managers. It was done within our Topeka on-base department, and because it is such a reduction on the overall work time, we are now looking at a running SLA on other docs. Not all, but other docs within our systems. We wanted to improve the channel of communication by introducing a weekly IMO email outlining all outstanding requirements for all contracts. So what we done here was we generated a pipeline. Not alone did we look at pipelines for potential sales, now we are looking at sales that are in process. From this pipeline, we've shared it with our communication department. The data analytics team now generate a weekly email to each of our IMO business partners, and what they do is they keep them in the loop of what applications are where and who they actually stand with. So there is no miscommunications and no policies fall through the gaps. We've lowered the number of stale dated applications. We've also now introduced call-outs into IMOs in the final month prior to the stale dating of the stale dating and going back to the start. We've implemented this outbound list on the back of our pipeline report. This goes to our call center departments in the relevant teams, and the outbounds are made here within the Irish contact center. This is once again lowered the stale dated applications. We've engaged with the IT department to develop a combined system. Once again, this is a long-term drive. Initial talks have taken place. We have ongoing development groups between the IT departments and the operations team. This is done over multiple sites, Topeka, New Jersey and Ireland, and this is an ongoing, so we do not have any result to report as yet. If we look at our future state value stream map, it doesn't differ drastically to the first one on slide number 3, but what you will see here is it's a lot more clean, it's a lot more defined, and the reason being we took that loop out of it where NIGOs, the potential for NIGOs were endless in our old one. With this new revised streamlined one, we've found certain savings, not drastic savings. We've found savings in our cycle time, and we have found savings in our lead time. But we have most definitely found we've reduced the potential for NIGOs and reworks. Since completing our process review, we've been able to draw a number of conclusions. We've been able to reduce the cycle time down by 205 minutes. The saving has come from the non-value add part of the process. If we combine the total cycle time and the lead time between the stages, we have reduced the entire process from 29 days, 5 hours and 15 minutes, down to 21 days, 13 hours and 50 minutes. This is a huge savings within the organization. This has not only had knock-on effects to our ability to be able to work larger volumes, but it has also had a knock-on effect to the end user, the customer getting their paperwork a hell of a lot sooner, and also it shines favorably on our IMO, our sales partners. We have implemented our quality, so all our orders now scrub 100% of data. We have reduced and eliminated NIGOs at an early stage. We have introduced our weekly emails to the IMOs in conjunction with the monthly calls, and this has also decreased the number of stale dated applications. This once again shines favorably on our IMO business partners, as there is nothing more frustrating or embarrassing as having to go back to somebody you sold a product to 3 months earlier to let them know that their money has not been performing the way that you promised, and we now have to go back to the application again. Overall, due to the more efficient service provided, our client satisfaction has increased, which has had an increase in applications for revenue. Our sales have gone up. Once again, this is an overall win from all parties involved. Finally, if we look at the A3 itself, what our original problem was, our outgoing transfer, our current process was, we looked at reducing the number of touch points on our new applications. When we looked at the value stream map, we had an awful lot of potential for error. Our goals were to create a streamlined process to reduce the touch points within this process. We looked at to analyze where our errors were, where our potential for errors were, and then we looked at our countermeasures. We have also had a follow-up, and we wish to reduce the stale dated applications. We've introduced the In conclusion, taking the opportunity to look at this, it has been a huge success, not alone from my department here, but for touching departments as well. This is something that, although this was a project for a college course, this is something that we're going to take, implement, and use more frequently going forward.